Hello everyone, Casey here from StartScreenPrintingNow.com, and welcome to part 4 of this series on the ultimate guide to creating artwork in Illustrator for screen printing. I think I've said it a different way every single time on all these videos, and I don't care anymore. I don't. Alright, let's just recap what we've done in previous videos real quick. We've created a template so we can do mock-ups. We've talked about spot colors and Pantone colors. In video 2, we talked about typesetting and the appearance panel. Part 3 was all about setting up brushes in Illustrator and creating our own brushes and illustrating in Illustrator. And now welcome to part 4, where we'll be talking about how to create an underbase and what an underbase is. In our last video about illustrating in Illustrator, we created this guy Lizzie, this lizard, and we sent him off to our client, we mocked him up, and we got approval. Now it's just time for us to print him. And what we need to do is, since we are printing this on a colored shirt, we need to put an underbase under Lizzie so that he prints correctly. So you might be asking yourself, what is an underbase for a t-shirt and why is it important? Okay, so imagine you're painting your car. Let's say your car is red and you want to paint it yellow. You wouldn't just go right on your red car and just start spraying down yellow paint. It's going to look really bad. It's going to probably turn out like almost orangish. That red paint from before is going to show up through your yellow paint, and it's going to mix together. So that's why when you paint a car or a house or a room, you put down a base coat or a primer that kind of acts as a new white canvas for your paint to go onto, and it's like a fresh start for your paint. Let's visualize this here. Let's say I want to print this circular let's say I want to print this cyan circle onto this red shirt. I'm going to set this to multiply, the blending mode on this to multiply, just to simulate what this would look like. If I were to print this cyan circle straight onto a red shirt, it's going to blend in with the fabric color of the shirt, and it's not going to be the right color. You can print as much as you want on here, and it's just going to not look good. It's going to be muddy, and your colors are not going to look good. But on the other hand, if we have an underbase, a white underbase that's completely opaque ink that we've already printed on the shirt, then you can see that once we print directly onto that underbase, it's going to be more like our intended colors. I'll line that up. Bam! Now we have our imprint covering our underbase, and it's perfect. Thank goodness. Okay, so in a perfect world, I can print this cyan circle directly on this circular underbase that's the same size, and everything lines up perfectly, and I can go on my merry way. But in the real world, when you go to print this, you're going to run into some problems. You need to tweak your underbase just a little bit to get it just right in the real world. For example, when I go to print this underbase, I'm going to need to hit it a lot harder than my other imprint colors. That's to ensure that I have a nice opaque underbase. I'm going to need to hit it a little bit harder, maybe hit it a couple times, so that the fibers and the colors of the t-shirt do not show through that underbase. And so I have a nice, even, thick underbase to lay my colors over. That was good. Now the problem with trying to get your underbase really opaque is that it's going to build up ink and that's going to squish out the sides. So instead of this exact circle right here, let's add about a 2 or 3 point stroke to it. And as you can see just a little bit of this underbase poking through the outside. You know, even if we didn't register this exactly right, we might get a little bit of underbase peeking through and the imprint color printing directly on the shirt, and it's going to look really bad. Have you ever seen a shirt that doesn't have a good underbase and you could see a little bit of white poking through the colors. That's because they didn't properly set up their underbase. Drives me crazy to see a shirt like that. Look at that. So what we need to do is we need to add a choke to our underbase. A choke is going to be reducing the outside edges of our underbase so that they're contracted a little bit, and it gives us a little more leeway when we go to hit that underbase hard. It's going to expand a little bit and meet the edges of that imprint color. So we're going to try and make it smaller, squish it, shrink it with a choke. The inverse of that is a trap. That's where we're going to add to the imprint color. That would be like expanding it. So I would add, a couple point sizes to that. And now we have an imprint color that's larger than the base. The base, we didn't make the base smaller, but we made the imprint larger. And with artwork like this simple, it's the same difference. You can do either one, a trap or a choke. But for most circumstances, you're going to need to add a choke to your underbase. So we'll do that right now to our lizard guy. All right, so the first things first, I'm going to clear off my artboard so I can get ready to set up a print area. Once again, I'm using Adobe Illustrator CS3, so I just have the one artboard. You might be some rich guy and you have CS6 and you have multiple artboards. You could even have CS4 and have multiple artboards, I believe. So let's clear off this artboard, move everything out of the way, and make room for Lizzie. I'm going to extend this colored panel into the artboard area so I can see what it'll look like when it's printing on a t-shirt. And I just locked that layer. I hit lock. You can do that with Command 2 or go up to Object, Lock. Next, I'm going to take the lizard and I'm going to put him on the artboard and make sure that I have him sized to the correct size. On my proof here, I said it was going to be a full front imprint 8 inches wide, and that's exactly what he's sized at right now, 8 inches wide. And the first thing I want to do before I start making my underbase is I want to set up my registration marks and align the artwork. Because once I make the underbase, it's going to be a lot harder to align the registration marks with my artwork and my underbase. Because my underbase might be a different shape than my artwork, and it might not align exactly right with the registration marks. Alright, so I have them aligned directly in the middle. I'm going to add a legend, full front. This is in registration. If you don't know any of this, watch part 1 of this series. My first color is going to be my white under base, and I'm going to make sure that I have that swatch applied in the legend. My next color is going to be my Pantone 363. Oops. And then lastly, we're going to print the black. At this point, I also like to clean up my swatch area. So I might go up here to select all unused in the swatch panel and trash. Hit the trash, and it's going to get rid of all the unused swatches. It is going to, however, keep all the swatches that are being used in the template and any other swatches you've used throughout your document. An easy way to keep track of the swatches you really need is I can just select my artwork, go down to the color palette right here, and say new color group. It's a little folder with a plus sign. Hit plus, and I'll do artwork swatches. And say OK. And now it made a little group folder of just those specific swatches, the white, the black, the green, and it made a halftone of that green as well. Because remember in the last video, we made his tummy a half tone of green. Alright, if you haven't already, this is a good time to make an underbase layer on your layers palette. I did new layer, and I'm going to say, give it a random color, let's say cyan. Name it underbase, and I'm going to put it between my artwork and my template layer. My template layer contains my this red color for the background, my registration marks, and my legend. So I can turn that off and on, and they're all independent of each other. I'm going to lock my template layer because I don't need to make any more changes to it. Okay, right off the bat, I will let you know that you do not need an underbase under your black ink. The t-shirt color is not going to show through black ink. It's just going to lay on there nice, and you don't need an underbase under black. If you add a white underbase under black, you're just going to make your black imprint look really glossy, and there's really no need for it. So I never put an underbase under black. So that kind of makes this artwork easy, but I'll show you, I'll make it a little bit more difficult for us in a little bit. So the first thing I do is I will copy this artwork, copy the lizard, and I'm going to paste in front with Command F. You can also go up to Edit, Paste in Front. And now we have a copy of our artwork directly on top of our original artwork. And I don't want to move this in any way. With this copy still selected, I'm going to select the underbase layer in the layers palette. I'm going to go up to Object, Arrange, Send to Current Layer. And I know it sent it to the underbase layer because now the vector lines are cyan. And I can actually turn off my artwork layer, and now we're working on my underbase. Okay, now it's simply a matter of I can go over here to the magic wand tool. I always like to set the tolerance to 0 on the magic wand tool, always 0. And I can just select all my colors, change them to my white swatch, and make sure I do this same thing to the halftone. Now pay careful attention, because when you add a white swatch to a halftone, it looks like it's white, but as you can see, it's going to be a halftone of this white still. It's still set to 60% white. So it was 60% Pantone 363. When I hit white, it's still going to be 60% white. So that's going to be a halftone. I want that to be a full color, full tinted white. So I'm going to change it to 100%. A good way to be able to check this if you have halftones in your artwork is you can always change the global color of this swatch just for temporary reasons. So let's say that this was still set to 60. I could see that it's a different color. So I'll change that back to 100, and I'll change white back to white. And now we pretty much have our underbase set up for this at the moment. Okay, because of this black outline, any of those problems with the white underbase expanding, we're just going to be printing black right over that artwork anyway. So if there is any underbase peeking out from these layer colors, these imprint colors, the black is just going to cover them right up and they're gone. For reference, let's just go here to the lizard. Let's pretend we didn't have an underbase on. You know, it might look something like this. The t-shirt color would go right through. And if I turn on my underbase layer, you can see it's going to print right on top of that white and look nice and sharp. I'm going to take off that multiply because I don't need it. Okay, so that was easy because we had that black outline around our artwork to really wrangle in any white underbase peeking out from our imprint colors. But what if that black outline was a different color? Okay, so first off, I'm going to delete this underbase and start over, and I'm going to go back to my artwork. And I'm going to pretend that this artwork had a different color. Instead of black, let's change this to you know what, let's find a Pantone color for it really quick. Go to color books, solid uncoated, and we can just do Pantone Violet. Let's do Pantone Violet. Alright, now that our black outline is a different color, this changes things because now we need to add a choke because we're going to put Underbase underneath this violet color. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to select the artwork, copy it, then I'm going to hit paste in front or Command F. I'm going to select my Underbase layer and do arrange, send to current layer. I still have my artwork selected and I have my Underbase layer selected as well, and I'm saying send to current layer. That's going to send it to the Underbase layer. I'll turn off my artwork layer and I'm just going to work in the Underbase now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten this artwork. As you can see, when I have this artwork selected, there's a stroke somewhere in here. I don't know where it is. It's probably some sort of unfilled stroke. So I'm going to go up to flatten transparency, say 100% vectors, and say OK, just in case. Now everything is a fill, but I want it all to be white. So I'm gonna go to my Pathfinder palette right here, hold down Option, and click Add to Shape Area. That's going to squish them all together and make it all one big white piece. As you can see, there's a few seams in our artwork where colors were butting up against each other. Like this was where the halftone of green and the 100% green were meeting, and there's a little seam there. And if I added a choke to this right now, this would show up. I don't want that to show up. So what I like to do there is I will go to View, Outline, or Command Y, and I can just simply take the lasso tool and select these little points that are unnecessary and delete them. Same here in his jawline, and delete them. The lasso tool can be accessed by hitting Q also. That's the shortcut. So now I have this Underbase artwork. The tongue and the hat are cut out so that we allow the red of the t-shirt to show through, and it looks like we're adding another color. Okay, so now we're going to add a choke to the Underbase. So simply what I need to do is select all the white. Not all the white, actually. I don't need to do a choke on these little points right here because these are going to be white and they don't really affect anything. If they expand, I don't really care. They don't need a choke. So I'm going to select my artwork and I'm going to add a stroke around the fill. Usually I use the same color as the garment color, which is red in this case. So as you can see, I added a red stroke around this white Underbase fill. Took it off. There it is again. And what it's doing is it's a 1 point stroke and it's contracting our Underbase just a little bit so that it doesn't expand and show up under our imprint layers. You might use a different stroke weight depending on how hard your print shop usually hits the Underbase. That might come with some experience, you know. Sometimes with certain printers I would need to use, sometimes I'd need to make my choke 1.25 points or maybe even 1.5 points just in case, if I really knew that someone was going to have to hit that Underbase really hard and they're going to get a lot of expansion of that Underbase. So I'll just do it 1.25. That's what I use pretty universally. Choke his hat, add 1.25 point stroke to it, and I don't need to add a choke to this little emblem. It's going to print white anyway. As you can see, it gets really, really thin in some areas. if I had this choke a little bit more, like maybe I had to use 1.4 points or 1.5. As you can see, the stroke is so large now, the choke is so large that it's actually cutting out some of this artwork. I will no longer have a underbase for those areas. And so in certain parts of the artwork, that means that the imprint color, this violet in particular, is going to be printing directly onto the t-shirt, and it's going to look a little bit different from the rest of the imprint. It's going to look really bad. And now we can see what would happen. The t-shirt color is bleeding through this violet because there's no underbase right there. So this is good where we want to illustrate when it's good to use a choke and a trap at the same time for the same artwork. So if I'm trying to get this 1.5 choke size, let's say I'm going to make a 0.75 choke and then a 0.75 trap on my imprint layer. So I'm going to change this to 0.75. And now I'm going to change the trap stroke to 0.75 as well. Now when the trap and the choke are added together, we're achieving that 1.5 point size that we were going for. This could be especially helpful if you have maybe like a bunch of names on the back of a shirt, like you're doing a sports team shirt. You're going to have a Caden, an Aiden, a Zayden, Braden, another Braden spelled a different way, another Caden. Let's put an apostrophe on this one, Caden. And so you have this big okay, so this might look like the typical back of a sports shirt, you know, a big roster of names all listed with something up at the top. I'm going to outline all this text right here. I hit Command-Shift-O with the text selected. You can also go up here, go to Create Outlines, Command-Shift-O. And that's going to turn your text into shapes. So now they're no longer editable text, they are now shapes with vector points. You know, there's a lot of fine details in this art, in these letters. There's little serifs, and when you add a choke around the underbase for this artwork, those serifs and little accent marks are going to get completely erased. So let's turn this into an underbase. I copied the artwork, pasted it. I copied the artwork, pasted it in front, selected the underbase layer, arrange, send to current layer. Now it's on the underbase layer. Now if I change this to white, I might put a choke around this text right here because it's thick enough, and I could put a 1.25 choke around that. But if I put a 1.25 point choke on this artwork, it's almost gone. All these little serifs are almost gone. So once again, I'm going to split the difference and use a trap and a choke. So I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to change this to, now it's going to be I'll say 0.75. So it's 0.75 points for the choke. And now I'm going to go to the artwork layer, select this artwork, and add an outline of the same imprint color. And I don't need 0.75, I need 0.5 right now to get 1.25 points. 0.5 plus 0.75 is going to give me 1.25 points worth of all this artwork has an outline that's 0.5 points. The underbase has a choke of 0.75, and they combine together to give me enough cushion so that when we go to print this, it's not going to poke out from underneath. Alright guys, that ends this video, and if you want to learn how to print this artwork in Illustrator without RIP software, you want your color separations to come out of your printer and be printed on film, I have a video on just that subject in my YouTube channel. Check that out. That also ends this series on creating artwork for screen printing in Illustrator. If y'all can think of anything else y'all are having trouble with in Illustrator, specifically for screen printing and creating artwork that will be printed on t-shirts and things like that, leave a comment, and I'll try to make some more videos on this series and expand it. But until then, go to startscreenprintingnow.com for more tips and tricks. Thanks guys.